and talk about our Syria programme. We've been working on Syria for quite a long time, but since 2016, but this is actually our third regionally based programme. We started off bringing people to the UK, saving them, rescuing them, giving them a future academically and personally here. But we realise also that there are many whom we cannot bring here. In today's complex world, it's important that we also work in the regions and on the regions. So the first of our regional programmes was on Iraq, and that was from 2006 to 2012. And then there was one on and in Zimbabwe, a very different country with very different problems, from 2009 to 2013, and since 2016, our Syria programme. What we're trying to do with this Syria programme is to provide training and research opportunities to help Syrian academics who have left their country but not come here for a variety of reasons, but who are in exile, still at risk, in exile somewhere else. And we run these programs essentially in Turkey as the main hub, with all of the problems that we have working in Turkey in its very, very complex political relationships under its precedent. But we work through blended learning and through face-to-face workshops in Istanbul. We've 450 students registered on our database. We have 130 who are very actively involved in our programs, 70 of them already at advanced stages in research, and more than 130 UK academics who are working online or in the Istanbul workshops, working with our Syrian colleagues there. So this is a national initiative, not purely one coming from the charity that is CARA, but from universities right across the UK, and that's something of which we are enormously proud. But we realised that we perhaps needed to do a little bit more than simply, with a lot of difficulty, help individuals. We perhaps needed to look at the underlying problems. So we decided to set up a strand of the Syria programme, which would be CARA commissioned research. And we are very lucky that we were able to work with the British Council on the one hand and with Cambridge University's Faculty of Education on the other. And we've published today 2 reports, which you will find in your bag, and it'll take more than a tube journey home to read them. But these are serious documents, so serious that we realized we could not publish them simply in English. They are published today also in Arabic, because we want to get the messages out. The first report in collaboration with the British Council was on higher education in Syria before 2011, the key moment when the civil war, as it were, became a massive conflict. And the second one explores the damage done since then, and this was done in collaboration with the Faculty of Education in Cambridge. And we're going to hear from 2 speakers now who worked on this, explaining, not giving you the detail of the report. That will happen elsewhere. There's a workshop happening next week in Istanbul with policymakers from around the world coming to talk with us about these reports. But I'd like to invite up Professor Colleen McLaughlin now and Dr. Shaher Abdul Latif. Colleen is the Director of Educational Innovation and leader of the Education Reform and Innovation team. And by jingo, she knows how to reform education. She's done it in Sub-Saharan Africa, she's done it in Kazakhstan, and now she's doing it in Syria. And we're enormously grateful to Colleen for her truly inspirational leadership. Without Colleen, I'm not sure we would have got these reports finished. So I would like to invite Colleen up, and also Shaher Abdul Latif, who is one of the Syrians involved in this. We want to involve Syrians in the research. And they'll talk about different aspects of the programme, beginning with Colleen and then ending with Shaher. Over to you. Welcome both, and thank you both.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for this invitation. And on behalf of the team, we We are actually extremely privileged and honoured to be here, especially in the company tonight. So I'm going to talk very briefly about, if you like, the key lessons we learned. So the project itself was a joint collaborative research project. It sounds such a simple idea when it was put to us, that we would undertake a real research project in collaboration with our Syrian colleagues, and we would publish a report. It turned out to be one of the most complex and challenging things I think I've ever done, actually, for many reasons. So the first report was, in a sense, a review of evidence for the British Council, but the second report was we were really trying to seriously research the current situation in Syria of higher education. And we had some, what we thought was fairly straightforward ideas about how we might do this at the beginning, which of course were all not at all useful in many ways, because the situation is so complex. So the first message for us was about how security makes research extraordinarily difficult. So the idea of interviews or of sharing information, how do you do that? How do you do that when people can't go to Syria? But despite that, my colleagues here on the Syrian aspect of the collaboration conducted 172 interviews, which in my view is an extraordinary achievement. The second problem we had was our brief was also to help our Syrian colleagues to understand qualitative research approaches rather than quantitative, which are very well known in the region. And so there were two problems we had. One was to get them to understand that this was actually can be a really rigorous and insightful method of research, but also other people. There was a mistrust of researchers in the context itself, where people didn't know why they should research. There had been many research projects, often by foreign organizations, and nothing had happened as a result of those. And that does a great disservice to research. And then, how did we know we could trust the data we were collecting? This is a big issue in terms of research in such contexts. I think one of my proudest moments was one of the Syrian colleagues said at the end, "This really can be very rigorous, can't it?" And I thought we'd really achieved something. The other big challenge for us was language and history, both of our context and of the Syrian academics' context. I always remember when I used the word investigate, and it got a reaction in the workshop, and I didn't understand why is this word so, because I was talking about research, and so we had to learn a lot about our different meanings and different challenges. And for me personally, it taught me how privileged I am, and particularly about my right to academic freedom. I'll just share this one story where at the end of the second workshop, we'd all been discussing recommendations together, and I summarized for the group, I hoped accurately, this list of recommendations. And there was total silence in the room, and I thought, oh my God, we've got that terribly wrong. And I said, what's the problem? And they said, if we had read out and said what you just said, we would probably not be alive. And I thought, okay, so that is what academic freedom is. And I felt hugely privileged myself to be able to do that. Well, part of the project, I'm just going to share briefly, it was a real learning for me, and it reinforces the messages that we've heard tonight, is we interviewed a whole group of academics in Syria, and these were their key, if you like, their key points. And I've headed it as a quotation from one of those interviews, "My profession is my dream." And so what I learned was that the most powerful thing we can do to colleagues such as this is to help them to work. This was in many ways a really, really important thing. Obviously, academics, you don't need me to tell you, academics and universities are extraordinarily vulnerable in conflict situations. And the trauma of the people who'd been through extraordinary experiences, this, for example, backdrop to this slide, is Aleppo University, were unimaginable to us. And just to reinforce that, this is a quote from a study: abrupt and coerced displacement is one of the harshest multiple loss experiences imaginable. So in the face of that, what is it that we can do, and what is it that these colleagues wanted? And what they wanted is the maintenance of their professional identity and the ability to work. That was a continuity that they could take with them. They wanted to have the sense of agency that comes from doing your job, that from being able to do good work. It was that gave them stability, gave them finance, pride, continuity, connection to the place they were in, and some form of legal status and protection. I have to say, unfortunately, that is still not happening necessarily, but it has made me a bit clearer about what the needs are. So in terms of that, I'm not going to read these out, because the report, and also the rather briefer version, if you want to read it, which is the policy brief, will give you a sense of the recommendations that we're going to make and that they wanted us to make together. I'm now going to hand over to Shaher, who's going to talk a bit more about this.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. What I did. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Just I want to say that I'm very happy and maybe lucky to be here. At the same time, a lot of my colleagues inside Syria facing the danger of losing their life. Actually, more than 8 years of ongoing war, conflict in Syria. Everything in the country is damaged and I can say destroyed. One of them, of course, the country's education system. A lot of details you will see in the report 1 and even in the report 2. This is regarding the higher education sector, but I'm focusing today on the challenges are facing by the Syrian academics. Most of them, the loss of any opportunity to work, especially for the academics in exile in Turkey or in other countries. Or even if they have some work contracts, it will be temporary or annual. So we feel as unstable situation. Or even some of us forced to work in non-scientific work. And as you know, as academic, it is very, very difficult to leave all our, I can say my dream, for example, was to be a teacher, to stay as I stand here now and talk to my students. And because this war, I lost this opportunity. Another things that the loss of academic institutional affiliation or academic identity. I think the first question when we meet each other now, where are you working? Nobody will ask me maybe your name or so, but where are you working? Academic without university or research center or something like this actually is not more an academic. Another thing is losing of documents and lack of movement, travel opportunities. I think it is well known because most of us they have or have just few seconds to leave the house, to leave your life actually, your home, and to go outside the country, or even internal displacement in the country. The other things also lack of scientific derived studies or reports or research opportunity, and this belong maybe to lost the workplace. And the final thing is the lack of engagement in decision making. We feel really that we are, well, maybe Kara is doing very great work and give us a hope for the future and to be involved again in academic life, but we feel internationally that we are not having or getting enough attention. A lot of interventions, a lot of programs of aid or support to the country, but very lack support for the academics. Well, why Kara Syria program is important? I think it is very great work done until now and hope for the future. I will focus just in my opinion on these 5 strands. English for academic purposes. There are even online or workshops in Istanbul, and it is very important for us to learn English in practice because, for example, in Turkey is the only option, the only opportunity to practice English during these workshops or these lessons. And also to develop our academic skills by writing or qualitative research, as by this research, as my Professor Colleen said, it's a very important thing. Also the research on occupation, building long-term relationships with our colleagues in UK or in other universities. This is also very important. The research itself, the collaborations on topics of relevance to Syria with similar research interests. I think from my experience last 2 years, when I talked with some of colleagues here in UK, I discovered a lot of opportunities to do and to research together. And this is maybe to be realistic. This is the most opportunity now we can do together. I mean, to support the Syrian academics by research or enable them to do research. When we will talk about employment or migration or some things, it will be more complicated and need a lot of time. I can't go to the next slide. Well, it's frozen, I think. Good. Why it is important also to support the Syrian academics to do research on issues related to Syria. One of the things Colleen said before, there are, how to say, scientific or sensitive things. The Syrian academics are well known with this, and they can react and they can understand this maybe very well. And another things, like me, for example, I did my PhD in Germany. So a lot of Syrian academics, they have an international skills and international relationships. And they are well skilled during this program since 2 years. A lot of workshops were done regarding research and data analysis, writing, and a lot of things. Also, they are able to identify the most important or priorities of the country recovery. Nowadays, we hear about recovery or reconstruction of Syria. And I think the Syrian actors are well in the position in this aspect. Also, as all society, they are essential actors for sustainable and feasible solutions for peace building and country reconstruction. I think always from this worst situation, but we can together as researchers benefit from this one. I mean, by knowledge exchange and experience exchange in conflict context. I hope that the Syrian conflict will be the last one, but we need to learn from what happened. Regarding the research key findings, the related findings to the higher education is announced or written very well in the report, but here is, from my opinion, this research actually enabled us, improved our academic skills because we learned by doing. Also, empower our teamwork culture, which is really, it's not so familiar in our culture to work in the university. We used to work each alone or maybe two colleagues or so, but during this research we learned to work together even in a big team. Also increased our self-confidence. We feel that there are colleagues, they stand with us, they support us. Encourage us to practice our academic life. Try to imagine in this very terrible situation. Really, a lot of us thought, okay, I'm not academic anymore, then I have to leave this life, I mean academic life. This research, the CARA Syria program in total, gave us a big hope that to continue our academic life. Also networking, even internally or externally. Today I met some colleagues, Syrian colleagues here. I met them for the first time. This is a big opportunity that CARA gives us. Well, finally, I would like to thank you for your coming, for your solidarity, and also to thank CARA for this great work, to thank Stephen to invite me and enable me to be here. I would like to thank Cambridge Research Team and British Council to enable this report done. And just what I can say on behalf of my Syrian colleagues, they would like to say you that we are still here. Thank you.